This is Marketplace Tech Bytes. It's our weekly roundup of some of the big stories making headlines and maybe some that you might have missed. I'm your host, Megan McCarty-Carino. This week, we're going to dig into what the Democrats are saying about tech policy. Google Chrome privacy lawsuit has been revived. And OpenAI has a new media partnership. We're going to talk about all of that, and here to discuss it is our regular contributor, Maria Curie. She's a tech reporter at Axios. Welcome, Maria.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So we're going to kick things off, like we always do, with our Byte of the Week. And this is a number that gives us some important insight into this week in tech. So, Maria, what's your number?
So my number this week is 7 million. Reid Hoffman donated $7 million to the Harris campaign, the leading super PAC for the Harris campaign. I think that's really notable because, you know, Harris is a long-time friend of the tech industry coming from California. And so I think this is a reflection of that goodwill that she has with major tech players.
Reid Hoffman, of course, one of the co-founders of LinkedIn and kind of one of the most prominent Democratic donors from the tech world. We're going to get a little bit more into, you know, what Reid Hoffman might be wanting to get for that $7 million. But first, we just kind of want to talk about what's been going on at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago this week. It's been generating some viral moments. There was this roll call where the delegates from each state cast their votes for the Democratic nominee. And this is what happened when they got to Georgia.
Georgia, how do you cast your vote?
Yeah! Ladies and gentlemen, we are here tonight to officially nominate Kamala Harris for president. Five, get loud, another round of shots. DNC, turn out for what? Turn out for what?
All right, so Lil Jon there, bringing the crowd to its feet. You know, I think we've had a fair number of figures from entertainment appearing at the DNC. What about tech? Have we heard much about tech?
No, and you know, we of course have been trying to get into the details of what a Harris administration might do around tech policy and how it might differ from, you know, the Biden administration. And I mean, I don't think it's surprising that we don't have a ton of details yet. She did enter the game a lot later than presidential candidates usually do. She hasn't had as much time to dig into the weeds of these policy issues, whether it's tech or other policy areas. And it's also kind of safe to assume that there will be a decent amount of continuity between Biden and Harris. That being said, we are starting to see, you know, some wish list items prop up. It still will be a new administration. One key difference between Harris and Biden is that Harris has such extensive experience in California dealing with the tech companies. Her know-how runs deep, and you have, you know, people from this industry as well, you know, industry players as well as advocacy players and others trying to tap into this new moment to get their wish list out there.
You noted some overlap with the Biden administration, which is sure to, you know, to be a part of the campaign. There is an official platform that was released before the convention. In fact, so much overlap that it actually still includes references to the Biden campaign, hasn't been updated. But something that, you know, it does kind of get into, I think, you know, which we have seen from the Biden administration so far is, you know, issues of competition, fairness, and of course, one Biden administration official has kind of been at the center of this and the center of some conversations, and that's FTC Chair Lina Khan, who has kind of been going after big tech. What is the conversation around her in terms of the Democratic donors in tech?
So I don't think that anyone is expecting a Harris administration to do a 180 in terms of, FTC actions on competition and antitrust. That being said, it will be a friendlier administration in terms of the relationships that are built there. And to your point about that DNC platform, that was created when Biden was still at the top of the ticket. And I think we can expect some things there to definitely change. Harris has a background as a prosecutor, and she's very invested in consumer issues and consumer protection. And so one area where she might focus more on is fraud, or how financial decisions are made, if there are any biases in those, or in housing. So those are areas where you can expect her to be more active and vocal on.
Mm-hmm. One word that I haven't really heard or seen a lot from Democrats is innovation. And I'm curious, if there are any clues in the platform or anything you've seen about the approach to innovation. Of course, Democrats already passed, the Chips and Science Act, which invests in onshoring chip production. But what else is there?
So, actually, we've been talking a lot about Harris, but Tim Walz is also someone who, as Minnesota governor, has touted the Chips and Science Act. His home state has one of the biggest tech hubs right now that's looking into medical research and AI in medical equipment and how that could be leveraged. In terms of innovation, that is something that both Republicans and Democrats both really care about, and they definitely don't want to get in the way of AI innovation, over-regulating it. And so we compare Harris a lot to Biden, but actually she could also be compared to former President Trump and what he would do. Something that he would do is completely overturn the AI executive order that, of course, happened under Biden and Harris. But the fact of the matter is that beyond that executive order, there aren't a lot of regulations in the works right now, and innovation is likely to continue because companies don't have a lot of guardrails right now. That's a bipartisan goal that, Harris definitely also cares about, coming from Silicon Valley.
All right, speaking of guardrails, we want to go now to a lawsuit against Google that has been revived this week. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals revived this class action lawsuit against Google by users of its Chrome browser, who said the company collected their personal information without permission after they chose not to sync their accounts, their browsers with their Google accounts. Maria, why did the judge here reverse the lower court decision to dismiss this case?
I mean, I think at the heart of this case is the question of what a reasonable consumer might do given these privacy notices. And I think that as consumers, we don't really even read them. But in this case, it was confusing. So Google has a general privacy notice across its products that basically says, you are consenting to us collecting your information. But then for Chrome specifically, they were saying something different in terms of, data collection. Your data would only be collected if you were syncing it across devices. And so consumers didn't think that their data was being collected. And that's why this was brought back to the lower courts to examine that more deeply. Google maintains that their privacy policies are clear, and that the sync aspect of it all allows for a seamless experience of their products. But we'll see how this plays out.
Now, this may not be, the biggest case or judgment for Google, but to sort of paraphrase Kamala Harris, it exists within the context of all that has come before.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us a little bit about that context, because there's been some big legal challenges for Google lately.
Yeah, Google is facing a lot of legal battles right now. The biggest one is, of course, Google lost the search case. Basically, a judge found that they are monopolizing search. And so that is another area where they are, facing a lot of heat. And I think it all comes down to the trust that, people have in this company and in this product that is so widely used while this plays out in the courts.
Now on to some news about the news. OpenAI this week announced a partnership with Condé Nast, of course, the storied magazine publisher of Vogue, The New Yorker, Bon Appetit, Vanity Fair. What do we know about what this partnership might actually entail?
We don't know the details, but we do know, so they haven't disclosed the details of their agreements, but we do know that what news publishers really care about is compensation and proper attribution. So we can, safely assume that these are things that they've gained in these agreements. This is notable even to our previous discussion about Google, because OpenAI is really leading the way now in ensuring that there are partnerships between the publishers that are feeding these algorithms and these models and the developers of them. This is an area where there are, lawsuits at play. And so it's kind of an interesting dichotomy. People are figuring out a way to work together while also suing each other. But it's interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, it sort of feels like news organizations, big ones, are kind of falling into one of two camps, either, beat them or join them. A lot of them joining up, like Condé Nast here, News Corp, The Atlantic, the AP, all making deals with OpenAI. Meanwhile, organizations like the New York Times are fighting them in court, alleging that they scraped their data without permission. What do you think this says about the current state of media and its interface with AI?
I think it's inevitable, right? These tools are already here. And, as a journalist myself, I think it makes sense to adjust to what is going on. But, at the same time, defend copyright. It's just too soon to tell how all of these things will play out. But what we do know is that it's forcing journalism companies and media companies to rethink the way that our content is being consumed. On the other hand, we've been talking about Google so much. They also have AI now incorporated into their search product. And so the normal traditional ways of journalism companies, making money through that traffic is also going away. And a lot of content creators are upset about that. And so I think on both sides, people are going to have to adjust and, get with the latest developments.
I guess my only hope is that this development will bring some better recipes being generated by ChatGPT, because I can tell you, I have had some wacky ones.
Absolutely. They definitely need the content creators out there to make sure that their outputs are much more helpful, for sure.
All right. Thanks, Maria. That is Maria Curie. She's a tech policy reporter with Axios. So good to have you.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for joining us for Marketplace Tech Bytes Week in Review. Daniel Shin produced this episode, and I'm Megan McCarty-Carino.
This is 8 p.m.